Okay, everyone, welcome. It's 5:01. We'll get started. Thanks for being here. I imagine a couple of other people will join us. We've got 16 on right now. Um, hope you all are having a great summer so far. We have a big presentation tonight. I don't know how many people saw the presentation last night, but it was well done. So I hope everyone will enjoy this presentation of the results. So we'll start just quickly though. And I'll remind you that the last meeting is now up on the CCNNA website, if anybody missed that. And then we will start by just going around and asking our council folks if they want to talk about anything else before we get started on tonight's topic. Councilwoman Sawyer, thanks for being here.
Hey Lou, thanks for having me. Hey everybody, it's good to see you. So a couple updates on things going on. There's a lot going on downtown right now. So wanted to just let everyone know our a huge shout out to Owen and to the aides in District 3 and District 6 who have been working with us on the vacant and derelict properties ordinance. They did a fantastic job on all of the background research and all of the things on it, and it passed unanimously. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? And so implementation date is February of 2026, and I think it will make a real difference in visually in the community, especially around things like vacant land, which we know we have some challenges with, particularly on the corner of First and Colorado. So that's great news. Really excited about that. Awesome job, Owen. Um, and then want to just let everyone know the bond projects have moved forward to full council. So it needs to be referred by us to you as the voters for a vote in November. First and University is included in the list of bond projects. So that is great news. Very, very excited about that. There was some conversation about taking it out, and I had a little bit of a panic attack, but it's back in. And so I'm still kind of thinking about what I want to do about 13th and 14th. The challenge is it's a $32 million project. And there's probably not $32 million worth of bond capacity left at this time. So I need to really think through what I want to do and how I want to attack that because it is such an extraordinary challenge in our community. But I'm just not sure that it is going to be included in this bond. But without that $18 million that is direct to 13th and 14th for District 5, just for the section between Colorado Boulevard and Quebec, we still have over $12 million in investment to our community in that is proposed in this bond that will go to you. So I am thrilled with that. Almost half of that is the intersection of First and University. So I'm really excited about that. Really glad to report that to you all. First, Cherry Creek in general has been passed over in the last couple of bonds that the city has put forward to the voters, and I just was not going to allow that to happen again. So thrilled that First and University is in there, and almost half of the bond capacity for District 5, which is about 12.5 million dollars. 5.7 of that is for First and University. It's an expensive project. So anyway, great news there. And I will stop there and see if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, take it away, Lou. You're muted.
Doug, did you have a question?
Yes, could I just ask Councilwoman Sawyer, when you're talking about the First and University project, you're including the bike path on First?
No, not it will not be the bike path. This is just to address some of the challenges at the intersection of First and University, including the pork chops that are there. So the design, the concept design for changes to First and University is included in the Denver Moves Cherry Creek plan. And that is what they'll be working on. And the value of that is that, of course, East West will be doing their corner, right? They're in charge of the kind of southeast corner of that. That's their land. And so we can dovetail onto that project to do the work all at the same time if it is included and fully funded in the bond project. So that's why it's so important.
And I'll just remind everybody here, because you all helped on and voted for it, but the community benefit agreement that we have with East West Partners on Cherry Creek West does include a discussion and provisions about that intersection. And in particular, what we're looking for is to have the pork chops basically vacated, hopefully, and we will be able to get some of that land to be the true gateway, which is a concept that was in the Cherry Creek area plan as well as Denver Moves. So when we get that, that will give us a chance to start talking about what that really looks like. So all these things will come together, and hopefully within the next few years, we'll actually be able to realize on some of those long-term goals that we've had. So
Yeah. And Lou, if I can just say one other thing to answer Doug's question. The bike lane project between First Avenue and Downing on between University and Downing on First Avenue was discussed as part of the bond projects. The executive committee removed that project from consideration because it is extremely contentious. That median on First Avenue is designated historic. It is part of the Spear Historic Parkway. And so Historic Denver has gotten involved. And so when we are looking at things to put forward as a bond project, needs to be the projects need to be essentially shovel ready, which means that there's a concept design in place done already and things like that. And because that project is so contentious, two things. First of all, not a great idea to send a super contentious project to the voters that they have to vote on, first of all. And second of all, with the conversations happening between our Department of Transportation and Infrastructure and Historic Denver and the Country Club and the residents and all of those different kinds of things, it's just not an appropriate project to put forward at this time in the bonds.
Okay, thanks for that explanation.
Yeah.
it is still proceeding in terms of the just the design phase. So, but that doesn't mean that anything else is funded. That's the only thing that is in process.
Right. Okay.
So if there aren't any other questions, I would like to ask Lisa maybe to tell us what's going on in the bid.
And I had to unmute myself. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a while since I've been on these calls, so I very much appreciate having a chance to just catch up with everyone and all the issues at hand. So hello. And right now in the bid, we are steeped in what we call our In Bloom umbrella. We have events galore going on right now. And hopefully some of you found yourselves in some of the things that we've been doing. We just wrapped up the Bastille Day French Fest, which was 3 days, and happy to report that, we attracted more people this year than we did last year. So I think that they're doing a really great job in terms of giving everyone a taste, a feeling, an experience of all things France, and really enjoy that. We're in the middle of a concert summer series, and we've adjusted it this year. It's every second Thursday during June through September. So we have two left, August 14th and September 11th. August 14th, we're doing kind of a throwback, if you will, cover bands that are really just amazing. So we'll be celebrating Beatles in August and the Eagles in September. And so we so encourage you to come out. I've seen so many neighborhood friends coming out, bringing chairs, enjoying the music. It just spans all ages. We've had kiddos and grandkiddos and young and old, and I represent the old, so I can happy to report that I was there. But at any rate, just enjoying these lovely evenings. So please come out and join us for the remaining two. We also just enjoyed 5280 Top of the Town, which is kind of a lovely food and wine experience. We have another art little festival, the Smash Fine Arts, and keep your eyes open in Fillmore. We have a couple, I can't really say dates, but we have super secret car shows going on in Fillmore, and those are very, very high-end cars that are coming out. And anyone who thinks that a big engine is fun and sassy European somethings are cool, come on out. Keep your eyes open. It's generally you'll find them on Saturday mornings between 8 and 10 o'clock a.m. So, and then, yeah, we just got done with sidewalk sale as well. So we're just cooking in that direction. And yes, we have construction. We're working on some fun ways to celebrate our construction and making sure that everyone on the ground finds their way around, as things come up and go down. These little, blockages, go from one corner to another, but we have some plans in place to make it fun and interesting despite some of this construction. So we'll be happy to unveil that soon for everyone. And yeah, and our businesses are just here and available for everyone and hope that you're all enjoying, all the things that Cherry Creek North offers. If I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to. All right. Well,
Appreciate you being here, and thanks for the update. I know that some of those concerts have been very well attended. So,
absolutely.
and tonight after this, get down there, sit outside. It is fabulous out there.
It is a lovely, lovely evening and day for sure.
Lisa, I just want to say that your landscaping group has been doing a really lovely job. I mean, it is a challenge to get to the library. It is a challenge to get to so many places, but they have done some beautiful plantings, and I've seen lots of people taking pictures because they're so unique. So I just wanted to say that if you're stuck in traffic, as a pedestrian, at least you have something pretty to look at. So thank you.
Oh, Meredith, we really, really appreciate those words, and I'll make sure that that team, gets the kudos that you're offering because we have invested more money in these areas and trying to really make sure that we are just as beautiful as we can possibly be because of the beautiful walking nature of this district. It's just nice to walk through and stop and smell the roses, so to speak.
So thank you very much. Jenny, I think you are here for East West. Or do you have anything to report on Cherry
Yeah.
Creek West?
Hey everybody, Jenny Jacobs from East West Partners, representing Cherry Creek West. So we were scheduled to have our first design advisory board meeting in July, but due to some summer vacations and not meeting quorum, it did get moved to August. So we're really just looking forward to presenting our first, enabling work and the first steps that we'll be doing. They did share that we will present over the course of a couple of different months just due to the size of the project, but looking forward to that first one in August.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that, we will turn to tonight's presentation. Jamie, I have made you a co-host so that you can share your screen. And if there's nothing else, I will turn it over to Jamie.
Great. Thank you, Lou, and thank you, everybody. Good to see you all tonight. I'm hoping you can all see the screen.
I was just about to say, Jamie, it came up for a hot second and then it disappeared again.
Thank you. Let me try one more time. Okay, if I go to full screen, can you see it when I'm in full screen?
No, that's when it pops down
Oh,
is when you
sure.
go into presentation mode for some reason.
That is so weird. Okay, hold on one second. Sorry about this. I don't usually have this much difficulty, but let me try it this way. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. All right, sorry about that. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for giving me the floor tonight to walk through the presentation that we gave last night at the community meeting to share out the results of the feasibility study. I know some of you were there, so this will be repeat information. I'm just going to re-present the deck that I presented last night, but I'll walk through it and then make sure we have plenty of time for questions and also give you just a brief update on some signups for the working group and kind of feedback we got after. So real quick, we're going to walk through tonight the feasibility study process, the findings from the community survey that we did, my kind of assessment of the feedback and some key themes that we heard that will be incorporated into the next steps and what those next steps are, how we'll go about detailing out projects, and then we'll recap the timeline. So just a reminder for the feasibility study process, again, the formation of a district is an extraordinarily long process, and this one will be right up there in terms of timeline because of the sheer amount of stakeholders we have to engage, the complexity of the district, and a lot of other factors. So the feasibility study portion of this is really to establish the baseline. Throughout the feasibility study, which was initiated last fall by the councilwoman and then really my work started in earnest in January. What we're really trying to do is get a baseline understanding of what people's kind of considerations are, expectations are for a district, what their priorities might be for what types of improvements they'd like to see in the neighborhood, and just doing a lot of listening. We also do data analysis on the number of stakeholders in the district, on property values, on different data sets that we need to understand how we might structure assessments in different ways. We begin to look at projects, we run assessment scenarios, and ultimately what I presented last night and I'm presenting today is just a framework for what the JID could look like and for considerations for moving forward. Again, I want to reiterate, and I mentioned this multiple times last night, this is a baseline effort. So I never expect going into a district formation process like this that we're going to come out of 8 months of a lot of education and listening, and having this be people's first touch point with this concept, that we're going to come out of it with a home run, and have support right out of the gate. District formation is complicated. It requires a lot of understanding. It requires a lot of nuance and complexity, as we'll talk about. And so really our goal here was to see where might there be a pathway for support, if there is any. Assuming we move forward, then there's still a lot of work to do. We'll talk about that later in the presentation. A full detailed business plan has to be developed. There's a petition signing process. City Council has to pass an ordinance. And then the final step in this is a Tabor election of electors within the district. So we'll circle back around to that at the end. This is just a snapshot of a lot of the meetings and listening sessions we've done. As you can see at the top, those are presentations, workshops, and sort of larger group listening sessions. We met with most of the organizations, I think all of the organizations that operate in some capacity in the community, from neighborhood associations to the Cherry Creek Chamber of Commerce, the Alliance, the Bid Board. We also met with and had small group meetings, or weren't always small, but nice meetings with residents, with businesses as well. And then we did one-on-one meetings. Those were mostly with some of the larger commercial owners in the district, or residential kind of apartment owners in the district who would be more impacted by a JID effort. We also did the survey, which hopefully you all responded to. That went out the week of May 23rd, and the survey closed June 15th. So survey findings. First of all, just a quick note, we initially had 716 responses to the survey. Upon reviewing the results, we found that there are a number of anomalies in the data. So there were a number of responses that had come from a single IP address, which was not actually allowed within the survey. So we had to work with SurveyMonkey to run an analysis, and we found that we'd been hit by some sort of bot or something or somebody who had knowledge of how to kind of uh, fidget with the SurveyMonkey device. So we had to eliminate what were 200 fake generated responses. So the final count of individuals responding to the survey was 506. However, 80 of those were not a resident, business owner, or property owner in the study area. So after answering the first question, they were kicked out. So that left 426 respondents to the survey. There's a lot of numbers on this slide. I do not expect you to digest them all, but you can also look at them when you have a little bit more time, as this is posted on the JID website. Basically, what I wanted to share here is statistical validity of the results. So when we do this, we want to make sure that we have captured a response rate that's statistically valid of the neighborhood. When we look at all respondents, so there's 7,717 possible respondents who would be electors within a JID. We got 426 responses. To be considered statistically valid, we had to have a minimum of 363. So in terms of the overall survey response, it is statistically valid based upon the number of electors. The same is true when you look at residential property owners. Those results, regardless of where they were, Cherry Creek Northeast in the bid, are statistically valid as well. However, when you start to break down the other subgroups, residential renters, commercial owners, when you look at the Cherry Creek East stakeholder responses as a grouping, or Cherry Creek North responses as a grouping, or the bid residential owners, we didn't get enough responses in any of those categories to ensure that the results were actually statistically valid. And so what's important to note about this as we look at it is that when we do the survey, again, this feasibility study, we're looking at survey results, we're looking and listening at what the feedback and questions we get from all the listening sessions. We can look at this as a good indicator. It doesn't mean it is going to be completely accurate on every count, especially as we sort of break down the data. And that in and of itself leads me to suggest that we need to dig a little deeper to make sure we have a clear understanding and a clear awareness of, in these subcategories, what people are looking for. So in terms of the responses to the survey, the question of most importance is, based upon what you know, are you interested in continuing the exploration into how a JID could support the Cherry Creek neighborhood? When you look at, there were 4 possible different types of responses: very interested, somewhat interested, and more information needed, and then not interested. So when you look at the breakdown here, 34.75%, so just over a third of respondents indicated they were interested and desired more information to be able to make an informed decision going forward. Of those respondents, 109 individuals provided contact information asking to be involved in the process as it moves forward. We also had 65% suggest they were not interested. Of note about that, on this question, people were allowed to select their answer, and then there was a comment box. And so there were a lot of comments within the comment box that suggested that folks would be more interested or inclined to change their mind should they have answers to some of the questions. Specific plans, what's the budget, what's the term limit, who gets to decide, how is the money going to be distributed, what does the governance structure look like, how are the dollars going to be distributed equitably throughout the neighborhood. So again, looking at those numbers, right, at first glance, you look at that and say, well, there's no interest in this. I want to remind you, we don't ever expect this to be, again, a home run right out of the gate. And in fact, having nearly 35% of respondents say they're interested at this point, where we haven't provided firm numbers, a firm plan, and basically I've just been providing education, is a pretty strong response rate, especially given you have about a 5% margin of error in the survey results. So I look at this and see positive for where we are in the process. You need 50 plus 1% to to be able to pass a district. And so this is a very strong start in terms of people who are interested in the concept. In terms of all respondents and their desire as to where funds should be spent, this is just a very colorful chart that that breaks down high priority, medium priority, and low priority. So where you see more green, that is a higher priority. And again, this is across the board, whether you're in Cherry Creek North or East or in the bid. Medium priority is blue, low priority is yellow. So you can see that security patrols, construction mitigation, pedestrian safety, neighborhood advocacy, street lighting, cleaning and maintenance, and so on in sort of that first column had quite a bit of support. And of note here, when you look at the totals in terms of people that responded to this, you had a lot of people that responded not interested in the JID who responded that these were also priority issues. So again, that's a question to delve into. How do we solve for some of these issues that the community has identified through a JID, or are there other ways to solve for some of these challenges for the community? When you look at top priorities by neighborhood, I just pulled out Cherry Creek North and Cherry Creek East for comparison. You can see these are the top 5 responses for each. For Cherry Creek North, security patrols, followed by construction mitigation, neighborhood advocacy, pedestrian safety, and street lighting. You see some of those mirrored in Cherry Creek East as their top priorities with a slightly different ordering. So street lighting is a higher priority there, followed by pedestrian safety and security patrols. Added to Cherry Creek East is cleaning and maintenance as a number 4 priority, as well as alley lighting, which is tied for number 5 with construction mitigation. So it's important to note, again, these were the high, medium, low. So the percentages shown are just for the high ranking. When you add in the medium ranking to the high ranking on each of these, it takes them well over 50% in each of these top 5 categories. And then there was also a question that had us open response box, no pre-populated answers, that asked, what's the single most important priority area you would want a JID to address as formed, if formed? And so these were the write-in responses. So I went through every individual write-in response and categorized it and counted it. So, and added a little bit more context where there was some specific responses from folks. So again, you can see these really mirror the priorities you've seen on the previous pages, safety and security far and away being the largest write-in response. So assessing the feedback and pulling it all together. First of all, I think based upon what I've shared with you here, further analysis is supported, both in the survey and throughout our engagement with stakeholders at community meetings, at one-on-ones. The big question is, the big response really has been, show me the details, give me specifics. And of course, coming into a process like this, we can't design the specifics for the community has to design it themselves. So at this point in the process, without all those concrete projects, pricing, and operating plan details, we are pretty much exactly where I'd expect us to be, if not higher. 35% of respondents showing support is significant, particularly given over 100 people provided their contact details and asked to participate in the next steps of the process. As I noted in the write-in responses, there were lots of folks who mentioned that they would become supporters possibly if further details were provided and their questions were answered, and if we could demonstrate a clear and direct return on investment. So it's typical in these district formation processes to see a 10 to 20% conversion rate where folks who are on the fence because they want more information become supporters once those details are provided and they can really wrap their head around a fully detailed business plan. The other thing that backs up further analysis is that the survey results really demonstrate differences in desired services and levels of support by sub-area. One of the things I've shared, I think, with many of you throughout this process is, again, I go into these district formation efforts with no preconceived notions of what anything should look like. My job is really to listen to the community and then turn that into something that the community can respond to. A lot of times we go into a district and there's sort of consensus across the board of the need of the entire area. Ballpark JID, as I've mentioned to you before, one of the case studies that I just finished last year is a great example. Going into that, everybody wanted safety, everybody wanted homeless outreach, everybody wanted cleaning. Those were the top three priorities, and everybody was willing to pay the exact same price to get that everywhere. In this case, early on, it became very clear that Cherry Creek North neighborhoods needs were very different from Cherry Creek East, were very different from the residents of the bid, were very different from, for example, businesses on 6th Avenue. And so I think what that is leading to is the ability to craft a plan that responds directly to the needs of each sub area and creates most likely different rates of assessment and different service plan by sub area, which is absolutely something we can do in the district, but it's going to require a lot more fact finding and information gathering to be able to craft that in a way that people feel that their needs are being responded to adequately. Second kind of key finding is that we do want to include the triangle going forward. So I've got a map here showing the triangle study area. This was not an area that was originally included when we started the work. It was something that emerged as part of discussions and conversations we had where folks asked why wasn't the triangle included. And the answer to that is that it's not part of the Cherry Creek statistical neighborhood. It's also not part of Councilwoman Sawyer's district. It's actually in Councilman Cashman's district. And so that part was left out. But there were a lot of comments on it sort of being an island, being Cherry Creek East adjacent, obviously being aligned with the Greenway, and being able to pull them in for services being something we should explore. So we did do some initial engagement with Councilman Cashman's office, just some postcards that didn't yield any feedback. But then we had one-on-one conversations with a couple of the larger property owners there, including folks from the Gables residential complex. And those were really great conversations where there was a lot of interest. Notably, we heard about security concerns down in the area, and also support for Greenway improvements to be realized. So as we go forward, there is definite interest, and I think it's appropriate to include the triangle as sort of a separate and distinctive study area to see what the feasibility is for pulling them in. I just want to note too, they were not included in our original survey, so we developed a special survey for triangle stakeholders, and we are gathering responses to that until August 1st. So that should help give us some additional information about this area. Third key finding is we have to find alternate ways to assess. Property taxes and using property values feel too unpredictable for residents in the area. If you've been watching the previous presentations we've done, obviously early in on these processes, people want some sense of what is this going to cost me, even before we know what we're doing. And so we used just some best practice kind of case studies. What do other districts assess to deliver kind of similar types of services? And a lot of other districts use property values or assessed values and a mill levy as the basis for assessment. And as we engaged with the community here, what we heard is that there's just too much volatility in how property values are assessed, particularly in residential, and some unknowns about what will happen with future residential rates, that people felt like, sure, it may be $250 for me this year, but next year I could get a new assessed value and it could skyrocket to 450. So the point here was create some predictability so that I can plan and budget for this on an annual basis. So a shift to a special assessment would allow different areas within a district to get what they want and would create reliability. And when we say special assessment, what I mean here is we can use any sort of kind of assessment variable that is predictable and fair. So you'll see some districts use square footage of land or square footage of buildings or square footage of land and buildings, or linear front footage for projects that are down a street. Or we can also, if we can make sure it's fair and equitable, do even a dollar amount per household for certain services that are delivered. So moving to that, you can also create layers of it, and you can create essentially different assessment rates by block for different levels of service by block. And so I think doing that allows us to really create a really nuanced approach to how we assess for specific services that shows in a direct alignment between the amount of service each household is getting and what it's going to cost that household as well. It also addresses one of the biggest fears and misconceptions that arose from this process, that one neighborhood would be paying or subsidizing another neighborhood's priorities. So through this next step in the process, we'll be able to get to almost a framework where you can see that you'll be getting exactly what you're paying for, and that those dollars will be going exactly to services in your area, not to somewhere else. The chart at the bottom is just sort of an FYI chart to help you all understand what some of the data looks like when you start to break down our study area by sub area. And these are pieces of information we'll continue to use as we analyze the cost. But what you're looking at here is we have different parts of the neighborhood. So Cherry Creek North, Cherry Creek East, the residential in the Cherry Creek North bid. Again, a reminder, we're not going to assess the commercial in the Cherry Creek North bid. They're already paying into the bid, but we are looking at assessing the residential, the mall and Cherry Creek West, and then the triangle. So you can see the total assessed value of those properties, the number of parcels that are in each area, and then the number of electors. And again, electors are owners of residential property, owners of commercial property, and residents who are registered to vote who live in the neighborhood. And then the fourth speaking point here in terms of assessing the input is, as I mentioned, really our goal and our focus of the next step is going to be to create a menu of services, allowing different areas to pick and choose. So as I mentioned, the support that received when you look at where the very interested, someone interested, more information needed, was scattered all over our study area. It wasn't concentrated in Cherry Creek North or Cherry Creek East or certain areas. So there's a variety of people interested in a variety of things, but we need to dive in deeper to dial in the hyper-local priorities. There's also general consensus on services desired, but the amount of specific services in a desired in an area differs. So I think street lighting is a great example. There are certain subsections of both Cherry Creek North and Cherry Creek East that desire lighting, but not necessarily the entirety of the neighborhood. So again, getting to almost that block by block understanding of the needs of the different areas will allow us to design a more appropriate assessment method. The map on the right is just an example. This is the downtown Denver district, and all of those numbers indicate different assessment zones. So as you can see there, they have 12 different assessment zones. And basically, if you're in assessment zone 1, you pay the most. And if you're in assessment zone 12, you pay the least. But you also get the most services in 1 and the least services in 12, and everything in between there. So we can get this granular as to the assessment rate and the frequency of services delivered. Ideally, ours won't be as complicated, but it can be if that's what it needs to be to sort of meet everybody's needs. So recommended next steps. What I'm seeing as I've gone through this process, given all I've shared with you, is there are a couple things. One, we have to break up the study and kind of the understanding, and really get into the weeds in each of these little niche areas of the entire study area. And two, while the feasibility study has been led out of the council office, and that is not unusual as a starting point, We're at the point now where residents need to be in the driver's seat, or I should say stakeholders, because it's not all residents, it can be businesses and commercial owners too. But stakeholders need to be in the driver's seat in really driving the next step and designing the what the JID is going to look like for their area. So my recommendation moving ahead is that step one, we're going to form area specific working groups. And that is going to happen as early as August. We're already working on getting those set up. There'll be 4 groups formed, one each for Cherry Creek East, Cherry Creek North, the Cherry Creek North bid residents, and then the Triangle. We have opened up a registration link for folks on the JID website, which I'll share with you in a moment. And there's also a QR code that will take you to that link on the right side of the screen. We welcome signups for people for the working group. We're also reaching out to those 109 individuals that responded with interest in further exploration and provided their contact information. With these working groups, we're not hand selecting or picking people. Everybody that registers will be allowed into the working group so long as they are actually a stakeholder in that sub area. They live there, they live there, or they own property there. And so long as they are willing to commit to the 3 working group sessions and doing the work in between. We do not want any appearance of kind of, again, designing the process with only supporters in mind. We welcome people who have lots of questions and really want to get into the weeds. And the focus of these working groups is that they will become the designers of the ultimate outreach and plans for their sub area. In terms of what the working group work will look like, so step 2 is working group session number 1. And that is really designing, kind of understanding neighborhood context and designing the next steps of engagement. So in August or September, each of the 4 steering groups or working groups will have their first meeting. They will help to develop engagement sessions that are specific to each of those sub areas and really allow neighbors to come together, having neighbors talk to neighbors about the JID and discussing the JID. They'll also be providing context into the survey results and feedback from their area and helping to design how to get more detailed information from their neighbors. So that will happen in August and September. The next step will be a working group session, a community input session that will be led by the working group. So the working group will help facilitate an engagement session that neighbors will be invited to attend. Conceptually, the sessions will feature tables focused on priority topic areas. So you'll have a table for safety, a table for lighting, a table for maintenance, pedestrian safety. And that picture you see is indicative of what I imagine this will look like. Neighbors sitting around a table with maps, talking about needs, priorities, and helping to provide more specificity on, well, we need lighting in this block, we don't need it in this block, we need really focused security here, maybe a security camera there. So the goal is really, again, that kind of getting in the weeds in each of the sub areas to design distinctive plans for each area. And then from there, the working group will review all the feedback from the discussions. And with the help of myself, the consulting team will review pricing and assessment possibilities to determine a final conceptual scope of services for their area. So we'll come out of this with 4 mini plans, one for Cherry Creek North, one for Cherry Creek East, one for the Triangle, one for residents in the General Improvement District. And the working groups will also discuss and recommend a governance model that's appropriate and reflective of the neighborhood. And to that point, whatever that governance model looks like, say, for example, it's 3 people from Cherry Creek East, 3 people from Cherry Creek North. The Cherry Creek East folks will identify 3 individuals that they would want to put forward to be part of the first board. So again, this is all coming from the community, not being led by the council office, not being led by me, really driven completely by this working group that will be coming together. From there, then I will take all of those sub plans and put them together into a detailed draft business plan And we will once again vet that with the community. So I anticipate that plan would be developed kind of in November, December over the holidays, and most likely be presented right after the new year for another round of feedback from stakeholders in the entire study area. I just want to talk real quickly on this last section and then next steps, and then I will wrap up. As we look at how we put together pricing projects and service delivery models, again, this is really designed by the community, and there's going to be a lot of different considerations that are considerations put into different approaches. My job in this is to bring forward best practices, ideas, inspiration from elsewhere. As you can see, for example, safety. There's a lot of different models, even just in Denver, about how districts work with the Denver Police Department via their individual security teams. So we'll be looking at some of those, looking at some of the case studies, maybe even hearing from some of the folks that provide security in different areas to talk about what their model look like so that stakeholders can assess the pros and cons of what might work for them. We'll be looking at different types of lighting. As I mentioned, one of the things we heard clearly is that lighting is needed somewhere, maybe not so much, some places, maybe not so much elsewhere. But what does lighting cost? What does it look like? What are the needs in the different areas? As well as things like alley lighting, which were a priority in Cherry Creek East. We'll be talking about options like flock cameras. Cameras were interesting because they were not part of our drop-down list of options as to prioritize, but they came up frequently in write-in responses. So flock cameras are a great example of where there's a lot of value in having a district so that you could partner with the police department. DPD is very supportive of flock cameras, which can really increase or improve arrest times and addressing criminal issues in a neighborhood. But they need a partner to partner with. So the JID could fund the cameras, the DPD would do the monitoring, and there would be an agreement between the two. I should note that Cherry Creek North bid does have a current agreement with the Denver Police Department for flock cameras in the bid area. Cleaning, maintenance, and snow removal. There were lots of comments kind of all over the board about interest in these things in various capacities. So snow removal, what on sidewalks, what might additional cleaning look like? Also just some beautification things, having flowers on street corners and things like that. One of the first JIDs in Denver that was created is a JID called the Gateway Village JID. It was created in 1995, and it is primarily single-family residential homes. And they do a lot of these things, as well as lighting and some other investments. But I think, for example, hearing from those folks on the value of having a coordinated approach to cleaning and maintenance might be a good way to learn more about the value of those types of things. Investing in transit and addressing parking concerns. As a standalone, the transit investment in a transit circulator didn't rank as high as some of the other priorities, but what did come across very strongly in all our outreach is concerns about parking in residential neighborhoods. So looking at comprehensive solutions to that may include some advocacy with the city around parking, but also we'll need to include how do we address the people coming into the neighborhood? What might a circulator look like? How could it provide service to residents? And how could we leverage funds to invest in something like this? This is a good example of how you need if you have a district, you can leverage additional grant funding to be able to fund things like this. RTD, for example, provides up to $600,000 a year for 3 years to seed fund the launch of a circulator program, but it requires matching and it requires an entity to receive the funding basically and oversee the program. So this is the type of thing where there could be a partnership to leverage other funding. The JID may just be a piece of the puzzle, but could be the entity that helped make the project happen. And then creek improvements is another one. Again, on its own, didn't necessarily rank very high, but things that did come into play in the survey were a desire for more green spaces, more activated spaces, more gathering spaces, more bike and pedestrian access. And this really hits on a lot of those things. So looking at the possibility of implementing some or all, or being, again, leverage to get other funding in place to do this project is something worth exploration. And then finally, advocacy and neighborhood leadership. So there was a lot of response around neighborhood advocacy, neighborhood leadership, neighborhood communications, and things that require what I would say are collective voice to advocate for. Things like construction mitigation, parking, pedestrian safety investments. Um, so as we look at that, we'll look to other districts and what they do. Two quick case studies that I just want to share in terms of what does advocacy look like or partnership look like. The Cherry Creek North bid, as a local example, manages meter bagging to mitigate negative impact to businesses and on-street parking. And I think they're the only district in Denver that does this, that has an agreement with the city. Basically, what was happening is if there was a reason for a closure, a street closure or parking uh, for bagging the meters on a Monday, the city would come through Friday and do it, blocking off parking all weekend. So the bid worked with the city to get an agreement in place, and now the bid bags meters and they wait until the last minute to do it to reduce the impact on street parking. Um, the Rhino bid and JID is another good example related to the construction mitigation. So back 5 to 10 years ago, when there was a ton of investment coming into Rhino, they had massive storm drainage investments going on in almost every street. They were changing one-way streets to two-way streets, and they were having a bunch of private investment happening all at the same time. Um, the North Denver Cornerstone Collaborative was formed, and that was basically a sub office of the mayor's office, and it included high-level reps from Public Works, Economic Development, Community Development and Planning, et cetera. And those folks were basically problem solvers just for this area. So they would be in conversation with the Rhino district every day about, somebody came to work today and both access points to their business were closed. And so NDCC would get into action and tackle that right away. So that was a good example of kind of the construction advocacy, construction mitigation and advocacy that can occur. So again, just some quick examples of the types of things we'll look at and explore for best practices and help people wrap their heads around what might this actually look like. All right, so wrapping up, final few things. This again is the JID exploration timeline. So we're wrapping up our feasibility study now. We're moving into the next steps, which are development of the JID operating plan and doing additional engagement. So we will launch that in August, and that will continue until the early part of January. If there is support in January, then we will finalize the plan. It will go through legal review and all of that. And then starting in February-ish, the petitioning portion of the process would start. That would continue until summer, and then that's when the city council process would start in summer of 26. And assuming we go to election, the election would occur on November 3rd, 2026. If the district is formed in November of 26, services would start as soon as January 2027, and revenue would start to come in then. So again, the next big step is getting people signed up for the working group. You can use this QR code to sign up. I hope you all do. Or you can go to the www.denvergov.org/ccgid, which has all sorts of great information on it, including the link to sign up. I will say since last night, we've gotten 16 signups so far. 15 of those have been from Cherry Creek North and one has been from Cherry Creek East. But we haven't done the push yet to the 109 people that signed up. And so we'll be doing that and continuing to work to get people signed up for this group. And that is it. So I'll just leave it here and open it up for questions. I see Jenny has her hand raised.
Thanks, Jamie. I did notice that, on your slide, you highlighted that Cherry Creek West and the shopping center are 165 million of the base, but we are not included in the working group feedback. So how will you be taking our feedback through the process between now and January?
That's great question, and I'm not leaving you out for sure, but we'll be having more direct conversations with you all based upon some information you guys also provided about services and things like that that you are planning to already provide through that. So between you and the mall, we'll be doing more targeted, just one-on-one engagement with you
Okay,
all.
thank you.
Yeah, promise to follow up shortly on that.
And Jamie, there's a question from Doug in the chat. There were two questions. The first one was from Meredith. Would Kavod and other nonprofits pay into the General Improvement District? I answered it. But can you just, for everyone, just talk through again kind of how it works for tax exempt organizations?
Yeah, so tax exempt, if they do not pay taxes, we cannot assess them through a special district. That said, as Amanda mentioned, there's lots of best practice for those entities paying through a payment in lieu of taxes. So basically, we find whatever the assessment method we're using for commercial and residential, we would apply that same rate to them based upon the characteristics of their property and ask them to sign an agreement with the district. So that's how that would work. One just little note I want to make is sometimes tax exempt owners have for-profit uses. And so if that is the case, they do actually pay property taxes on that. They are actually assessable. So if that is the case, we would be able to assess the property or at least the portions of the property that are used for a for-profit use.
And Meredith's question was specific to Kavod, which is an senior affordable living facility in Cherry Creek East. And so So for them, if they wanted to participate, it would be a payment in lieu of taxes. But thanks for that question. And then Doug had just mentioned Country Club has security patrols that some residents in Country Club pay for and sponsor. And he would be happy to discuss that as well. So thanks for that, Doug.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And Doug, just to clarify, not everybody pays into that, correct?
Actually, we do have two services. We have one that is paid out of the dues of Country Club, and that's the one that started 15 years ago. So, and then another group has started their own private security service, which is maybe a third of the residents of Country Club pay into that themselves. So we basically have two services going at the same time right now.
And actually, I think that the bid is very familiar with the security services and the cost because they do that throughout the bid. So I think between those kind of resources, that might be helpful, Jamie, if anybody's really looking to price it. But I mean,
Yeah.
the bids service is obviously more robust, but and it's one security service, and I know they spend a tremendous amount on security. So one other thing just on the flock cameras, and this has come up because a couple people asked me, it's even though there have been questions about how that can be utilized, they're being legally utilized within the bid. So there is nothing that would prevent a JID from doing that as well. And I think, Doug, you had said that you guys were looking into flock cameras. Did Country Club end up using flock cameras?
Yes, we did purchase them, but we have actually not been able to get enough movement with the city or with the police department to get them added to the network. So we've been working on that for the last 2 or 3 years, even though we did buy the cameras.
Okay.
So part of it is placement, where to place them and what property to place them on. And then also, I think some of this controversy that came up this past year has also sort of slowed things down. So.
And I will just say, for those of you who kind of don't follow all things happening at the city, the controversy that Doug is talking about is just a concern from the ACLU and several council members, including it's being run by our at-large council members, a concern about privacy rights and how the data on the back end is used and who can access that data. So, two things about that. Number one, those conversations are still happening within the city to try and kind of come to an ordinance that would govern all data that is collected by the city and find the kind of right balance with privacy and that. The second, so stay tuned for more on that. The second is that there is even if the city were to no longer use the 111 city cameras that we have right now that are Flock cameras, private entities can continue to work with Flock. Flock is a third-party company. So we have a number of different locations that have pursued Flock and are installing them. And those would continue, those are outside of the city services. And so those would continue with DPD and Flock. The key here, and I think what's really important to note, is what Jamie mentioned earlier, which is there has to be an entity that can sign the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, with the police department and with Flock in order to get that done, right? And that would not be the city. So I think as we look at the idea of security cameras within Cherry Creek, the Cherry Creek Business Improvement District is that entity for the Flock cameras that are in the bid. If license plate reader cameras are something that residents outside of the bid within the Cherry Creek statistical neighborhood wanted to, or the Cherry Creek neighborhood in general and Country Club neighborhood wanted to pursue, you can absolutely do that, but there has to be an entity that can sign the paperwork for you. And so that would be, a pretty big benefit of a general improvement district would be the general improvement district could be that entity. So in the same way we talked about, there has to be an entity to sign the agreement, with someone like RTD, if we wanted to do a circulator or something like that, same thing. There's got to be an entity that signs the paperwork.
Lou, I can't, I don't know how to raise my hand to ask a question.
Oh, go ahead, Annette.
Okay, so this is probably going to sound confrontational, and I don't mean it to be, but I am trying to understand. I kind of processed overnight and your rationale for using 30% approval for going ahead, but I guess what I would say is that when we had our first meeting, we were told that if the majority of our residents didn't want to do this, that you wouldn't proceed. And 70% of Cherry Creek North said they did not want to do it. So I guess what you're saying is 30% do, and when people see the plan, their minds are going to be changed, and maybe they are. But I guess what I would say, that if you are going to do this again someplace else, you need to tell people what constitutes going forward. Because actually, I was kind of appalled that when 70% of the people said they didn't want to do it, you're going to go ahead and do it anyway. Mm-hmm. So maybe some upfront 30% is all we need to go ahead with continued planning would be good. It came off very confrontational because, I mean, I was in what universe is 30% say you should go ahead? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair, Annette. And I think it's a totally fair question. And I don't take it as confrontational, right, at all. I think that what I was hoping in kind of doing the survey and was that we would have been able to get a real solid answer. I think the problem is that what the survey responses showed us, the data that we have showed us that we don't know, right? If you do the
But-
math on it's not 30%, it's 35%, 65%. But so if you, with a 5% margin of error that gets you to 40, if 10% are going to change their mind potentially in the future, that gets you to 50. So like, is it fair to say, that is it fair to say that we don't know? We really don't know. I think what the survey results showed us, and even people who said no in their responses said, I'm saying no now, like in the written responses said, I'm saying no now because there's not enough information, right? And so that tells us like that people need more information. And I think that I totally fair and I get it. But I also think when you look at the potential swing, which does put you over 50%, and you look at the margin of error of 5% with those numbers, and you look at the comments that we got back, when you kind of put all of that together, what we really heard is we don't know. We don't know.
And I just want to add too, and I totally get it, Annette. Look, I've been doing this for 25 years. This is not a linear path. Had it been a very clear direction, no and no and no, and there's no way we would ever consider this go away. And I've had that happen. I've absolutely had that happen. I don't see that here. And I think the issue is that there are also a large contingent of people who are very interested in it. So the concept is not that you're voting on it today or tomorrow or even next month. Should this actually move forward, you're still over a year away from an actual yes, no vote. I think what I heard, and we heard this exact statement directly from a number of people, let the neighbors talk to the neighbors about it and make a decision. Get the council office out of the equation. We don't want to be persuaded on things. Let the neighbors talk to the neighbors and decide. And so that's what I designed, is a next step that will span over the next few months and give us firm answers. And I think we can be in rooms. I've sat with Cherry Creek North folks who are adamantly opposed and aren't going to shift from that. I have full respect for that. And we've talked to Cherry Creek North people who are adamantly in favor of it because they've seen it work elsewhere and they think we need it. And I'm totally respect that. Not my decision, but I hope that those two parties can talk to each other and decide one way or another what it is, where it is. And again, we can be super surgical about this. We may take in half of Cherry Creek North that sees value and leave the other half out. We may take out Cherry Creek East entirely, right? Like, I think that's the approach right now that we're looking at, is just let's get down to into the weeds a little bit and make sure we fully understand what this is and isn't and where people are.
So the other thing I would say, and I guess anybody who signs up can be part of the working group, right?
Correct.
So I think, I probably am going to sign up, but I think people who are opposed to this plan should be on the working group too.
And they will be.
Yeah. I think
Just-
that's really important because you need some balancing to the Pollyanna out here to the maybe not. So
You're
I mean,
absolutely
that would be, and you've heard before, my objection to the survey a little bit was you threw out all this candy and then said, wouldn't you like it? But who wouldn't? But, that's for a different discussion. But, okay.
Yes. Opposition is welcome. Supporters are welcome. And like I said, my job now is to create a forum that allows neighbors to talk to neighbors and do it in an informed way, with actual facts and details and numbers and things like that to kind of work through what this actually looks like. I think Lindy had her hand up and then Tracy. Linda, you're on mute if you're trying to talk.
Well, Linda, I'll go while you're trying to find that mute button. So, real quick, Jamie, and I'm not familiar. I'm familiar with the with bids having management, having a staff on board to handle the day-to-day operations, but I'm not familiar with JIDs having a paid staff to handle the day-to-day operations. I could see where that's it's going to be necessary based on what is being somewhat proposed at this point. So what are we talking about there? I mean, is there management staff for other JIDs, and what is that price point? How many staff? What's the cost of having staff to manage the GID?
Yep. It's exactly like bids, Tracy. And really the JIDs can do the same thing. They can hire an executive director and a staff. They could contract out their services. They could contract with another entity. The board could manage it and just do contracts for service. So really, the management structure is going to be driven by the what, by the what it is we're actually doing. And just to use the ballpark JID as the latest example, so that JID hired an executive director. That director is their only staff of the JID, but they have a contract with Block by Block to do the clean, safe, and homeless outreach. And that's about $1 million contract. And Block by Block's approach is that they provide a full-time operations manager, and then you have staff, but the company manages all the HR and the hiring and payroll and everything. So there's basically an executive director, and then Block by Block, which has an operations manager, and then it's the board. And that's kind of how lean they wanted to run it. So again, it's really going to be up to the services. Like they could be staffed up like the bid in Cherry Creek North, or it could be no director and just sort of an admin person that helps the board, or it could be somewhere in between. So that would be part of the next phase that, I'd provide some recommendations once we knew the services that were going to be provided. But generally, obviously, any direct admin, I always try to keep to under 15% of the total budget.
Linda, are you able to ask your question? Where did you go? Maybe she's logging back in. Just other questions? So Tracy, you're still on the Cherry Creek East board, correct? So how is the board engaging the rest of the residents, or
So I apologize for nodding my head so quickly. I am not on the board. I just am one of the 4 designated representatives. Bill Tanner is on the board and Bill Allen is on the board, right, Brooks?
Me too. Hello? Hello?
Hi, Robin, you're there. There she is.
Oh, there
Yes.
you go, Robin.
There
I
she
didn't see
is.
you there. Yeah. Hi,
Hello.
Robin.
I've been looking, I heard the presentation on Tuesday, so just caught part of this one. We have been reaching out to our members through our newsletter, and all the way back in March at our in-person meeting, as well as social media. We have a Facebook page, and we have people that post things on Nextdoor. So that's how.
Perfect.
Robin, would you be able to push out the link to participate in the working group if
Sure.
folks want to? If we get that too, I can just, it's in the presentation, but I can just copy everybody and make sure you guys have the link to the sign up form so that you can push it out to your respective groups.
Yes, we'll do that. And then Owen, I got an email from you asking too about a meeting place. Is Owen there? Yeah, there you are.
I was
So-
trying to find the unmute button, Robin. I was just trying to see if you had a better, more direct contact to Bro to get to the seasons to use that community room.
I think Bill Tanner might.
Okay, great.
Was on the call, but he's not answering. But yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
You're the best.
We
Thank you.
should. Yeah, I think we do.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Any other questions I can answer?
Well, I just wanted to chime in. I'm not representing Cherry Creek East, but I'm just throwing it out there. There is a lot of Cherry Creek East that is not participating in Cherry Creek East Association. So and that's always a challenge. And having experience with other neighborhood associations, how do you involve HOAs that are already, one board and then another board and then another one? How do you get them involved? Because you have a lot of density on the west edge of Cherry Creek East. So and they'll have a lot of voting power. So it's one of those real big challenges that, going back to Dennis Swain, was so difficult to crack. And I don't know the answer, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Meredith. These processes sort of they build. It's like a web that builds out. So I think you always start with the most engaged people and kind of the easiest pathways for communication. But as it grows, we're going to continue to create networks of outreach. So, I mean, we've done engagement through the council office. We've sent postcards multiple times. We've directly engaged with the HOAs and sent letters to them. We had them respond to a survey. We're using the neighborhood associations. We're using the chamber. We're using the alliance. We're asking people to reach out to their networks and forward on. So again, because we don't have time. This is a long process and it takes a lot of steps. But through the process, I generally find that the network of people engaged in the discussion gets bigger and bigger. So really, we can only do so much. You all are in the community. I ask people every time we have a community session, please tell your friends and neighbors. Please send them to the website. Please ask people to get engaged. There's only so much you can do, right, for people that are either tuned in or not. And so we will do our best, but also we rely on you all to tell us and kind of clue us into other ways to get to folks in the community.
So I texted Linda. She said she has a new iPad and lost her sound. She was curious about the size of working groups for impact on service option discussions.
Yeah, I am going to be interested to see how many people sign up, right? I think normally when I form working groups, like 12 to 15 is the sweet spot, but I'm not going to limit it to that. So we may well get I mean, we already have 15 people signed up in Cherry Creek North. We may well get larger groups. That said, remember the working group is just going to be kind of the guideposts for the next steps. And there we will be committing to a community outreach session, which everybody will be mailed a postcard to, where even if you're not on the working group, you can still participate in that community session. So I think as long as we at least get 12 to 15 working group members for each of the sub areas, I'll feel good about it. Anything beyond that is sort of icing on the cake.
Okay. Meredith suggested there can be info at the CCEA block party.
Yeah, when is that? Meredith, when is the CCEA block party?
Robin probably knows.
Yeah, it's Saturday, August 2nd. We are planning to have, I didn't mention this before, we are planning to have information about the GID at the block party. Definitely. It's in like 2 weeks. We'll do our best to spread the word.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions right now? If not, we are, it's 6:20. We only have 10 more minutes. Thank you for that presentation and all the really hard work. And I think people need to just remember that while we're just looking at this very early stage, It is something that Councilwoman Sawyer is footing the bill for us to try to find answers to problems that have been identified over the last several years. So if it's not the JID, this is just one way to look at solutions. And I think we all just need to thank her for actually hiring Jamie and doing the hard work, because this is hard work and it may not happen. But at least it is an option to address concerns that people have had over the last few years. So I just want to throw out the thanks for that, because it's part of her budget and she's focusing on us. So for that, we should all be thankful. I also did want to report that our zoning group met yesterday with Randy Nichols, who has acquired the dance, Cherry Creek dance property. So that's a really great thing. He actually lives at North Creek right now. And so he's a neighbor with a lot of experience, obviously, in development in the neighborhood. He was talking about residential, which would be a condo project. If we could get another condo project, flats in Cherry Creek, it would be great. I think there's a real need for that. He didn't commit to that, but that property will require rezoning. So, and he asked about the steering committee. He said, I was one of the first people to serve on that. And I said, well, you're always welcome back, right? I mean, he could join us at any time, but as things move along and as his plans sort of solidify, we'll ask him to come in. I'm sure he would be happy to talk to this group about what he is planning as they move forward with his rezoning. So I did want to just report on that. And with that, does anybody have anything they'd like to add? It's 6:22, so I'll open the floor. If not, we'll bring this to a close.
I'm going to make a big plug for the mile-long table. I know it's not Cherry Creek, but it's I'm volunteering and I'm going to be. I bought a ticket, but it's going to be 5,280 humans across Denver feasting at the Auraria campus. Tickets are $5.28. And you can make a donation. Serendipity is doing the catering. There's going to be all this entertainment going on. And so it's on Saturday. And it's about bringing community together, having conversation, having civil conversation, and meaningful connections. So I know there's some press, there's still some tickets available, and spread the word, because I just think that it's one more thing to make us proud about Denver and excited about it. And if you can't pay $5.28, you can come on down anyway. But it's being underwritten in part by Southwest Airlines. But Serendipity is doing the catering, and
Great.
it looks great.
So this is Annette is on the executive committee of INC, and I have served on that committee too. They've also they're a sponsor of this in Cherry Creek North. So we do have some extra tickets. And I don't know, Annette, I think you and I talked about maybe going down there too. But it's also, if those of you who were not involved with Inc. for the Join or Die, you can find this great video movie documentary is really what it is, called Join or Die on Netflix. And it's really about community. And I think Meredith is right. This Saturday's luncheon is a really great way to think about community. Tracy?
Oh, I just wanted to add, just to thank Councilwoman Sawyer one more time about fighting for us to get into the bond project. That is difficult work. And kudos to you, Councilwoman, for making that happen. And I'm grateful to have you representing the Cherry Creek area.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Anybody else? So show up on Saturday if you want lunch, if you want to. The only issue is getting down there. I think there is some free parking, right, Annette?
There is.
And
There is
so
free parking.
if anybody is really interested in that, I think we could find some more information, but
Oh,
certainly.
Cassawary is $30. Just to
No,
give you a heads up. And
there is some parking. Keith sent, the INC president sent something about with your
Oh.
ticket, you can, there's a site, you get a assigned parking space. You have to pay something, but it's not $30.
okay, because
If I
they
can
have some.
find that email, I can shoot it.
They have something for volunteers, but there's also there's some light rail, there's the 6 bus, and I checked, and I can bicycle there in 28 minutes, and I can drive my car in 24. So I'm gonna leave 4 minutes earlier and pedal my little bicycle.
Okay, well, it's a great event. It's even probably fairly walkable because it will be in the morning, so hopefully it wouldn't be so hot. So anyway, if you can turn out and just, I think this is a real good message to end on. Community is really important. And the it was Robert Putnam, right? Isn't that who it was in that he wrote Bowling Alone, and just a scholarly guy who really studied the impact of community, and that people who get involved in groups like this one have a tremendous amount of value added to their lives. But as the overall community, democracy works better when people are involved in community. So we have so much community in this group, our related groups, and I think it's just really good to recognize that that's what we're doing here. And so we carry it back, and I appreciate all of you for being a part of that community. It's a good watch, it's fun, and it does make you think about these groups and how much they bring to all of our collective lives and to our community and to our democracy. So with that, I'll put that plug in to have you go watch that Join or Die on Netflix. Attend Saturday for a next to free lunch and quite an experience. And if anybody needs more information, just give a shout out to me or to Annette, and we'll do what we can to help you get a ticket or get more information about it. So thank you all. It's 6:28, 2 minutes early. So thank you. Have a great evening. Bye, you guys.
Leave. Okay. Leave.